Hello, everyone. Once again, thank you for joining back. I'm Devesh Lati, and this is a session where you are going to hear from Ishaan Kapoor uh, of, about how he got into the University of Oxford. So, Ishaan, it's a pleasure to have you here today.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me. And can you hear me?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Um, yeah, so I'll
Okay,
start with how I got. Hmm?
so maybe let's start by you introducing yourself, telling it a little bit about where you're from, which school, and about your journey to Oxford.
Yeah, sure. So I'm from Bombay, but I've moved around a fair bit in India. I did my high school in the Doon School, which is up in Dehradun, and I was there from the eighth grade onwards. And yeah, in Doon, I basically realized that I want to study biology, and I applied to Oxford.
Cool. And you're in which year right now?
I just graduated last year, actually, so it's a
Oh,
3-year degree. So technically, I would be a senior in the US.
oh, wonderful. That's great. So tell us about what was your major and why did you decide to study that?
Sure. So my major was cells and systems biology with a focus on neuroscience. And the reason I decided, so you elect your majors before you come into university in the UK. You select a subject that you're going to be studying and focusing on. And so I decided on the 11th grade that I really like biology and I want to better study biology at the level of university. And that happened through a series of fortunate events, which was I liked the biology textbook that I was using. I did well in biology, so there was an obvious preference for me that I should do what I'm good at. And I think there are some very important unanswered questions in biology that I was lucky enough to stumble across, like how does the brain work, rather crudely. Yeah.
That's so great. All of those who are just joining us, we have with us Ishaan Kapoor from the University of Oxford, and he's sharing with us his story of how he got in. He's going to tell us about his extracurricular activities, about his UCAS essay, and a lot of things. So, my next question to you is, Ishaan, why did you decide to go to Oxford, and what other colleges did you apply to, and then why Oxford in the end?
Sure. I applied to both the US and the UK, and the choice came down to a college in the US that I'd gotten into, a few colleges in the US I'd gotten into, and then Oxford in the UK. So in the UK, it was between UCL and Oxford. And the reason I ended up picking the UK over the US was largely I knew what I wanted to study and I didn't want to have to deal with the liberal arts education. So it's a year gone into deciding what you want to do. I didn't particularly need that year. So I was like, I'm going to take the shortcut. I'm going to go to the UK where I can specialize from day one and just study what I'm interested in.
Okay, that's great. That's wonderful. Um, okay, my next question is who do you think would be a good fit at Oxford, and who would be not such a good fit?
That's a good question. The thing about Oxford or any large university, I would say, is that you're always going to find a few people with like mindset. So there's no one who just blanket will not fit because there's bound to be people like you. But there might be people who are better suited than others. I think the one thing that you have to be to the one thing that will make you better suited for a university like Oxford, where you declare your major before you come in, is just a love for that subject. So not necessarily that you want to do something with that subject later. It might just be that you enjoy studying that subject because it's going to be a lot of work on a single subject and you better enjoy it if you're going to study it for 3 years and you get no breaks from it. So someone who loves a single subject and knows that they have this love for the subject before going into university would definitely flourish at Oxford.
Okay, that's a superb advice. Um, Ishan, tell us a little bit about your high school subjects and about your grades, and if you took any standardized tests or English proficiency tests. Tell us about your scores.
Sure. So I did the ICSE till the 10th grade, where I had the standard ICSE subjects. My sixth subject was economics. And I really enjoyed studying econ and most of the other ICSE subjects. I still think the ICSE is an incredible curriculum because it teaches you a lot and it preps you really well for university. For 11th and 12th, I picked the IB curriculum. So I had a choice between ISC and IB. I picked the IB, and the reason I picked the IB was because I wanted to study biology, but I didn't necessarily want to do physics. And in ISC, you're kind of restricted in that you have to take physics, maths, chemistry, and then if you want to take the additional biology with it, you can take biology as well. At least in my school, that's what the choices that they offered us. So I ended up picking the IB, where my subjects at a higher level were biology, chemistry, and maths. And at a lower level, at standard level, I had English literature, econ, and French ab initio. And my standardized test scores. So I took both the SAT and the ACT. In the SAT, I took the old version of the SAT, so I got a 2240 if I'm not wrong. I wasn't the happiest with that score, and then I retook the ACT and got a 35. And then I took the subject test in, I think, biology, chemistry, and further maths and English literature. Didn't do too well in English literature, got a 730, and I think I got 800s in the other three. And English proficiency tests, I took both the IELTS because you need to take that for the UK. Actually, no, I didn't have to take the IELTS because IBHL English literature, if you get a 7 in it, it qualifies you and you can skip the IELTS. I'd taken the TOEFL and I'd gotten 119, I think, in the TOEFL a while back.
Okay, that's great. Ishan, now we come to a little more interesting part. Tell us about what was on your college profile. What all extracurricular activities did you participate in your school? And it's probably like 4 to 5 years now, but try to recall those things.
Actually, it's not that different from what I do now because I didn't actually drop too many things that I was doing in school when I came to college. So I had a couple of sports on there. I did athletics majorly as my sport. So I specialized in javelin throwing and high jump in school, and then I continued javelin throwing into university. So that was a big one because I did district athletics, and then I competed at states as well for high jump, I think. Yeah. And I had a couple other sports that I played for my school. So I had football, cricket. Yeah, I had football and cricket in there. And so that was sports. The other big extracurricular activity was debating. So I got into debating fairly early. I got into debating in the 7th or the 8th grade, and I stuck with debating through high school. So debating was another big one. MUNing came with it. So I'd done a couple of MUNs. I had some leadership positions in school as well. So I got those in. And then in terms of extracurricular activities that weren't to do with school, I had a summer school that I had done at Johns Hopkins University. And so the professor at that who taught me my course at that summer school became a good friend of mine. And I ended up writing an abstract for a poster presentation at a conference with him, and then ended up going to present that poster at a conference with that professor. That was another big one. And the last one was I'd shadowed a neurosurgeon in Mumbai, and along with that neurosurgeon and a couple others, I wrote a small outpatient booklet to just a general information brochure on how to identify early signs of neuropsychiatric conditions like dementias, like Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, and what some basic first aid tips are to caring for people who might suffer from such disorders or might start showing signs of such disorders. So I think that those were the big ones that I can remember off the top of my head. I'm trying to think if there's something else that I'm missing out now. No, I think that was it. Yeah.
Okay. And really interesting, the writing a research paper, writing those articles at during high school. It's really interesting. Writing about neuropsychology. It's great. Tell us about your UCAS essay. What did you write in your UCAS essay?
Yeah, I should also mention when you said what extracurriculars were there on your college application, most of these extracurriculars did not feature on my UCAS application or my UK application because the UK application is largely academic minded. So I think I had a line about debating in my UCAS essay because there's 4,000 characters. I couldn't give more than like 50 characters to maybe debating and sports each. So I didn't have too much out there. Most of my UCAS essay was about why I enjoy studying biology and why neuroscience in particular. And what motivates me to understand more about neuroscience. So I think the UCAS essay, if there's any advice I can give or like anything that I think worked for me, it's just expressing an interest in the subject and showing that you kind of understand the subject more than just the basic rote of picking up facts from your textbook and regurgitating them onto an exam paper. So small things like you understand what it means for, and I'll take examples from biology, but if you want me to diversify and take examples from econ, I can do that too. But in terms of like biology, just you will have a chapter on proteins in your textbook, and then you'll have a chapter on cell membranes or the cytoplasm or just general cell biology. Understanding how proteins work in the context of cell biology is not something that is written out in sentences for you in a textbook. And having understanding of processes like that that build up to a general process shows that you've kind of understood what's going on in your textbook, assimilated that information, and now understand the broad processes of biology that you want to be studying at some point later in university. So I think it's largely focusing on that. It's focusing on showcasing that you have an understanding in biology and why biology interests you in particular. So it's a combination of both those things. And I think that's what I ended up writing most about. And I don't remember my UCAS as a full disclosure. I think it was about, yeah, it was just about why I think understanding the brain is a very cool thing to be doing. And I really want to try understanding the brain.
That's wonderful. That's really great. Okay, and now let me just take some audience questions here. Let me just try and find out. Someone is saying, is Oxford more theory based? Now, would you like to comment on that?
So in the course structure, yes, because there's no mandated practicals. So it depends on what course you specialize in. For my course, we had like mandated lab practicals, which lasted 1 day every 2 weeks, which is not much at all for experimental science. And then we had like a compulsory experimental project for 8 to 10 weeks. And then we could, of course, work more than that if you wanted to, but the course did not mandate that you do. I think the US, you have labs in particular which count for credits towards your major, and that makes you go more into a lab and do more hands-on things. But yes, Oxford is largely, they will give you a bunch of theory, and it's very good to develop a theoretical foundation of the subject that you are studying, but they will not compel you to do much experimentation. You can do it off your own time.
Okay, okay. Did you write any exam to get into Oxford? Uh, and did you also go through some interviews for getting in Oxford?
Yeah, so to get into Oxford, there's three big things. There's your, well, three and a half big things. The first is just your test scores. So your ICSE grade or your 10 standard board examination scores and your predicted scores, those have to be of a certain standard. And I don't know what the cutoff is. I don't think there's a hard cutoff, but like they have to be pretty good in order for them to consider your application. The second thing is you have to sit an entrance test of the subject of your choosing. So for instance, for biomedical science, which is the subject that I chose, the entrance test is called the Biomedical Aptitude Test, or BMAT, and it has 3 sections. There's a verbal reasoning section, there's a non-verbal reasoning section, there's a science section, and then there's an essay that you have to write. And all you have to do in that is get above average. Like, it doesn't matter if you get 95th percentile, it's good for you. Like, you're more likely to get in, but all you have to do literally is get above 60 percentile and you'll be fine. And that's not that hard to do. The last thing then is the third thing that matters, and I think arguably this matters the most, because at some level now I'm assuming that a lot of people listening to this webinar are done with ICSE, so can't control those grades anymore. So the last thing is then going to be the interview. So after you've gotten your ICSE grades, and then the half that I mentioned was your statement of purpose, because unless you've got the grades and unless you've done well in this entrance test, they won't look at your statement of purpose. But if they look at your when they do, then the statement of purpose becomes slightly important. And then the last thing is the interview. And at the end of the day, everything's going to come down to the interview, because they're going to select as best as they can using your grades and your entrance test scores, get you into the interview. And then they're going to forget about your grades and your entrance test scores and focus on just the interview itself. And the interview is a largely academic interview. They won't ask you questions about who you are. They won't ask you what you like to do in your free time. They'll, in 20 minutes, try to understand how well you understand biology and whether you have an aptitude or a bent for learning biology or learning whatever subject you want to learn, or learning economics. So they will, for maths and for engineering, they will hand you a problem sheet, which is just a set of word problems or like maths equations, and just tell you to solve them and just talk through what you're doing and why you're thinking of doing what you think you're doing. And I know so many people who haven't reached the correct answer of a lot of these problems and have still gotten in just because of just because they're able to show how their brain works and how they understand the subject.
Wonderful. And do tell us a little bit more about your internship, your job shadowing with the neurosurgeon as well. How did you contact them, and sort of how did that go?
So I was pretty shameless. I just emailed like 5 people saying, "Hi, I'm in 10th standard. I like the brain. Please, can I shadow you? Or please, can I just see what you do?" And I will not lie, the internship was very boring because all I did, because it's a neurosurgeon's office, I've got no medical training. So I'm obviously not allowed to help or participate in anything other than like keeping track of when patients are coming in, who patients are coming in, and maybe scheduling appointments. But again, the neurosurgeon had had someone taking care of that already. So I was just sat there watching how they work through processes, how they talk to patients. Mostly I wasn't allowed to enter patient consultation as well because of privacy laws. But sometimes Dr. Doshi would ask the patient if I could sit in, and they would be very sweet about it and say yes. And then I would just see what the entire process was like. So it was 2 months. It was quite boring because I didn't have to do much, but it helped me understand what neurosurgeon, like what the day-to-day work of a neurosurgeon actually is.
Wonderful. Oh, Bishan, that's really great. And we are now coming towards the end of this call. And before closing it, I would just ask you if you could share a piece of advice with the students who are considering or who might be applying to Oxford. What would you like to say to them?
Don't try cramming too much information into your application because it doesn't matter. Focus on 2 things that you're good at, which is your subject and why that subject motivates you, and try showcasing in 4,000 characters your aptitude for learning that subject. There can be a line about your extracurricular activities, about why those interest you. So the way you're going to phrase your extracurricular activities is, I do this because I am interested in this, or this interests me, and this translates to biology in some way. Or I have, because I have been a part of this, I've gained these skills, which helps me better understand this facet of biology, such as I write for an economics journal, and therefore I know how to phrase arguments, and that has better helped me understand how Darwinian arguments work against Lamarckian evolution, something like that. But that's how you're going to largely do it. And yeah, I think that's probably the best advice I can give. It's just don't try dropping as much information as you can, because it's going to show a relatively shallow understanding of the subject that you're applying for. The UK is largely not about that. They might be very impressed with your application, but they would not know that you understand biology or whatever subject you're studying as well as you should know it. Yeah.
Wonderful, superb. Thank you so much, Ishan, for sharing all this great information. And it was a pleasure having you here on this call today. Now, there are a lot of questions that the students are asking, and we cannot take these on call. But if you could just stay back for a few moments and just type in the answers for those questions, it would really be great. I'm sure they'll benefit a lot. Yeah. So
Happy to. Thank you so much for having me.
thank you, Ishan. With that, we are coming to the end of this session and moving on to the next one. And I would invite my colleague Devika to take over and have the conversation with Yash.